You're listening to the N2K Space Network.
Welcome to T-Minus Deep Space from N2K Networks. I'm Maria Varmazes, host of the T-Minus Space Daily podcast. And Deep Space includes extended interviews and bonus content for a deeper look into some of the topics that we cover on our daily program. So today, we're going to be talking about two of my favorite topics, space and food. Research on space and food has mainly been led by governments, but as our guest Alan Herbert will address, food in space is likely to be a commercial endeavor. And I started off by asking Alan what he's doing as a commercial space agri-food advocate.
What I look at right now is I look at how to work with companies so they can become more commercial dealing with food and space, that companies or organization or people that normally don't deal with space. I think we all in the space community need to know we're seeing it, but it still has that government part of it. But agriculture and food, agriculture is commercial around the world, no matter what. Food production is commercial. Food delivery is commercial. Food research is commercial. Agriculture research is commercial. Everything dealing with food on Earth, mostly, unless in some other countries, is commercial. And what we have right now, the government's doing a lot of the research, universities on agri-food production in space. But the bottom line, it's going to be commercial. I got involved in this. I look back at even on my family. My great-grandparents were just 1 inch away from being enslaved. Their parents were enslaved. And so the first thing they did was become farmers because that made them independent. They could grow their own food. They, all types of different things. And then as the century, as time goes on, a lot of us left farming to do other things. But the great thing is my great-grandparents, we still have their land, but nobody's really farming now. And so for me, I really love this. I have a picture of them, of both of them right near their farm. And it's like, here I am in the year 2023. I'm looking at being an astro farmer. I call myself an astro farmer.
Oh, that's cool.
Looking at what we're going to do in space, how are we going to commercialize it? And coming from the type of background I came from, I didn't come from, even when I worked for a large company, Nanarax, Voyager, all of them before, but I always worked in the commercial part, not in the government part. So I had to be creative. I have a new company called Space Terra Solutions. It's based here in Las Vegas, in Nevada. We harness space technology for sustainable agri-food growth and production on Earth and in space, but commercially. We look at how, because one of the things is, if the government is not supporting it, which the government should, is we got to look at how we can make it sustainable commercially. And that's what I look at too. And so we look at a diverse range of things. I call my 10 impact areas. One, waste reutilization, which could be used, I call it dual purpose, could be used in Earth and space, water reutilization, energy efficiency, utilization of AI, lighting, which is very important, robotics, seed development and nutrition, the different types of growth medium, 3D printed lab grown food, wellness. And then we also look at the culinary arts. One of our clients, she is an ice cream scientist.
Oh my God, best job ever.
I'm telling you, she's looking at how do we utilize ice cream in space? How do we make it in space? How do we do desserts in space? All of these things are important.
She's speaking my language.
Okay. So all these things are so important. You probably should have her on your podcast.
Honestly, yeah.
Interesting. And so she's been all over the world, everywhere. And that's one of our clients. So now she's looking at how she wants to do an experiment in space. on and how ice cream melts, what's the best type to use. I mean, it is just amazing.
Way beyond freeze-dried cubes that we...
No, that's not really astronaut, no. But she's looking at how when you grow strawberries, you can grow strawberries in space. How do you turn that into ice cream in space in microgravity? I mean, it's just so much, Maria, so many things that we have to look at. If we're on the moon, all these things have to be commercial. So that's what we do. That's what I do now.
Well, that's amazing. And it sounds like the application is also like not just in space, but also I hear a lot of things that have application on Earth too, like making. Yeah. And can you talk a little bit more about that too? Because I mean, maybe it's my personal angle. I am always fascinated about what we're going to be doing in space, but to me, what we're doing on Earth is more immediate, I suppose, less abstract to me.
Okay. Let's look at this. Water reutilization. Okay. The water gets reused over and over and over again, even in the International Space Station. When we're on the moon, Mars, wherever we are, we're going to have to reutilize that. I live in Nevada. They have a water problem. So we have to look at that technology for water reutilization. In Abu Dhabi, Dubai, in desert regions, they have to look at water reutilization. We waste so much water here. So that same technology, that's what I always look at, Maria, could be used on Earth and in space. And already some of the ISS technology they're using to reutilize water in other countries and things like that. Then waste reutilization, that's my passion, okay? I'm one of these people, when you go to a restaurant, I got to eat everything or I got to take it with me. In space, Maria, you can't waste, I'm going to throw this in the garbage, I'm going to do this. No, that food that you leave or whatever you do, even the packaging has to be reutilized. And so that same technology could be used here. One of the things I was going to talk about later is that I try to live like I live as an astro farmer, astro chef, or whatever, as if I live in space. One, most people in space will have to be plant-based or lab-based, but really a lot of plant-based if we're going to grow it. But I look at when I go somewhere, how do I reutilize the food? I have a whole little garden I'm growing using composting. We can start living like we would have to live in space, because in space, everything is no joke, has to be reused. Then also energy efficiency. One of the issues with closed environment agriculture, even on Earth, is there's a lot of energy that needs to be for the whole closed environment. So on space, you have to really be energy efficiency, AI, utilizing AI for robotics, for the environment, for the nutrition. AI could be used in all kinds of things on Earth and space. Lighting is huge on Earth because you have to have efficient lighting, and there's different type of lighting to grow the food a different type of way. It can be used on Earth and space. Robotics, of course, because the astronauts can't do all that. So you have to make it mechanized.
Of course, yeah. Yep.
Seed development and nutrition, I was involved in, where we sent seeds up into space and they see how they react in space and they brought it back to Earth. So that's a lot of people are looking at that.
The mutations, right? Yeah.
Yeah. The wellness. I mean, there's so many things, even with the mutations that are sent up into space, it has to be able to deal with a harsh environment. But now they're using those seeds here on Earth to grow in harsh environments. And the Chinese have been really leaders in that. And even the United Nations is starting to look at that. And so they could use them as climate change is wreaking havoc, especially in harsh environments like deserts in Africa or around the world. They're looking at ways, how can we make these seeds strong to be able to stand up to harsh environments?
I was going to say, what kind of mutations are they seeing once the seeds go to space? Is it that they're more able to withstand temperature swings?
Yes,
or
that's it. Yeah. Exactly.
It's garden,
easy.
so
I mean, there's a whole scientific thing about it, but bottom line, it makes them stronger to deal with Earth. It's like, those science fiction movies, the guy goes up, gets blasted, and it comes back as Superman.
Yeah.
So it's almost the same. The Chinese are good at that. So in an unscientific way, yes, the seeds come down and they're able to deal with a harsh environment because they've been exposed, basically. And so The other thing is wellness. They say the astronauts, when they do the gardening on the space station, it helps them deal because they see stuff growing and it helps them deal with certain things and being up there. They're watching something grow. It's not dead, like it's because space is just, ooh. And so that's what I see. What I see in the future, Maria, is that when you go on your trip to the moon, a vacation or as a journalist, or you're going to be interviewing people, why do you live here? What's going on here? When you go out to eat, I want to see that it's a commercial company that is growing the food, that is getting the water, and even maybe another commercial company that's putting the food together for you to eat. I see it as commercial and not government. And because I think even as time goes on, the commercial entities are going to really take over and do it.
Yeah.
They're already doing that already.
Yeah,
you can see
that's
that
true.
now.
Yeah.
But I see it more in a little niche here into the food production and things like that.
We'll be right back. When you said that you like to live like you're in space, but here on Earth, that made me think of two things, like the zero waste. Well, they call it a movement, but really it's
Zero
like
waste?
Yeah. It's also in a way pre-industrialization, kind of how humans had to live because we couldn't waste stuff. And it's just amazing to think that we can actually look to the most modern of modern things, space, and be like, we can actually in a way kind of get back to some of those principles of not wasting things. It's just like this amazing tying of these two things that seem so far apart, but in a way it's the principles can actually bind them together. A lot of the times when I talk to people about what we can learn for Earth, for the climate from agricultural practices that we're developing in space, a lot of times the discussion goes to like satellites helping us understand what's going on. I was curious what your thoughts are on that, like how that might relate to what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, satellites are huge. It's commercial. What we do, we're looking at what we can do here on Earth and in space. Because satellites, they're looking at the Earth, they're seeing when you need to plant, all kinds of things with the satellites. We don't get involved in that much. We're looking at if this is real. Okay, this is not Star Trek where we're going to, go to the thing and the food come popping out.
I mean, I would love that, but
yeah, me too. And that should be coming sooner or later, but you're still going to need material.
Yeah, of course.
I think that what we're doing, you have a multi-billion-dollar industry, which is a closed environment agriculture, vertical farming. It came out of NASA from 40 years ago. And so this is an industry, it's not going to change. We can have the satellites look at everything and do this, but a place like Abu Dhabi or Dubai, where they import 85% of their food, they are looking at all kinds of technologies so they could grow the food right there and maybe in an enclosed environment. They're spending millions on that. To them, it's like defense, basically. And it really came about more during the pandemic. Here in America, we're getting there, but it hasn't impacted us yet, okay? But around the world, all the different places that have to import their food, they said, okay, we got to figure out. We don't have a lot of land, okay? The satellites are looking like land. We got to figure out how to make food right here. If we're importing 90% of our food and then there's a disruption in the supply chain, that's not good for us. And so for us, looking at what's happening around the world, we don't deal with the satellite technology as much as what's really needed here on Earth right now and what's going to be really needed on the moon. I mean, we're not going to be growing plants. We're not going to need satellites to grow plants on the moon. It's got to be enclosed. That's the future for what we're looking at right now. And another thing is, I look at commercially, technologies that you develop there can be used here on Earth because you have to look at a market, okay? There's not a huge market right now for doing food in space. It's partially, but it's mostly research.
Yeah, that's sort of the background question in my mind as you've been talking about this was the market for it. I mean, I know potentially we're going to get there, but right now I'm just wondering like what, yeah, you're addressing it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for us, we always look at, okay, how do we apply this here on Earth and have a market here on Earth for this? You can have an AI system. You can have a energy efficient system, water reutilization system, or even waste reutilization. What I'm doing is not technology, but I'm developing a system in my household where, okay, we're not going to waste this. We're not going to do this. We're going to live like we're in space. You say, oh, let's exercise like an astronaut. Let's live like, you hear like all that kind of things. But if Maria, if you're in space, you're going to have to be very conscious of what you throw away, of what you use, what you eat. And I go to conferences and I can't take it sometimes where I see all this food going to waste.
Yep. Yeah.
And, and they can't really just give it away to people or whatever. They may put it in some kind of thing, but it's really wasted food. It just gets to me. If I go to a restaurant and it's left, I take it. I always take my food.
Honestly, I think a lot of us are with you on that. Yeah, conferences are notorious for that kind of waste. I mean, it's just like, yeah, I've seen that. You mentioned something really interesting and I know it also speaks to your background, that you're a major advocate for perspectives about what's going on in life in the Middle East, Africa, and the South Asia region. And I feel like, especially since a lot of space discussions, and it's not a bad thing, it's just how it is. Like, it's very US-centric often, or US and Western Europe. And I often wonder to myself, like, we're missing a lot. We're missing like huge parts of the world. And given your expertise and your where you've worked, where you've lived, like, to you, what's missing from the conversation when we talk about like space and food and maybe just like commercial space in general?
Well, I lived in Abu Dhabi for almost 4 years. And it was the middle of, one part, you have Southeast Asia, you had Africa. Everybody was very close. And they really respected what we were trying to do, and it really meant a lot. And I think the world is missing out because if you look at India, they're doing all sorts of things very fast at a good price point, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And then the UAE, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, they're like the center of even for funding. They're getting their people ready for this new space world. They have investment funds going into it now. They're looking at the year 2017 to have their own Mars settlement. They sent their astronaut up for 6 months. One of the reasons why I was there is their first astronaut went up in 2019. And the Nanorex, the company I was with before, we helped set up 18 experiments for him. And that's how I started going back and forth. And I started living there, basically, to surround the whole area. Then you have Israel, you have North Africa, South Africa, Nigeria. All these countries are doing a lot of stuff, mostly focused on satellite development. But they're looking at all these different things. And one of the things, Maria, by the year 2100, 2 out of 3 people in the world will be in the MESA region, Middle East, Africa, South Asia. That's where they're going to come from. And so, you watch Star Trek, all these different shows, they're more diverse now. But in the future, that's the 2 out of 3 people in the world will be from those areas. And so they're trying right now for food, technology, development. So I think that more people need to pay more close attention because everything, coming back to America, I just got here in August. Everything is really US-centric. And I said, do you realize what's going on out there? And everybody in the world is getting involved. China, Japan, are looking at this region as a power base. I mean, Africa is really booming, and people don't even, because people have stereotypes of areas.
Yes, they sure
and
do.
So they don't understand. A lot of stuff is going on. So I always, when I talk to people, I say, really pay close attention to the MESA region. I always say the MESA region. I think it's going to be a very powerful space area
I'm excited by it personally. I think it's fantastic. I'm based in the US. I'm an American citizen, but I'm missing so much of the conversations happening around the world because I am still so US centric. So I appreciate your perspective on that as well, because it's something that I always want to keep in mind. So is there anything else that you wanted to say to the audience or yeah, by all means, go ahead.
One of the things that when I talk to people, when I was growing up, Maria, there was no STEM programs. And I always say this, it was Star Trek, Lost in Space, and Space 1999. That was my STEM program.
Yeah.
Okay? And so I am very much into how media, affects STEM. My wife's a writer. So she said, I started writing science fiction. I write what they call African science fiction. And I write science fiction about the Mesa region. And so I'm writing stuff dealing with sustainability, space sustainability, but these are stories. These are, fiction stories that people could get into, because I believe that when you were saying, if you see different types of people, in some of the movies and shows, you see different types of people, but it's always American centric.
Yes.
Still.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially Star Trek. I love it. But yes, it's
we're still Americans in there.
Yeah. So they're like, America doesn't exist. I'm like, it definitely still does in Star Trek. Let's be real.
Yeah. And so my stories, it's like the captain may be from Africa or from India or from the Middle East or whatever. I look at things because I lived there for 4 years. Abu Dhabi had 200 nationalities and nobody was majority, basically. And so I was used to different people, different religions, different everything, And so I believe that space is going to be like that, but people still don't see it all the time. There's so many British people in space movies. I don't know how that happened. I'm sorry.
I can guess.
And so, India's farther ahead than Britain right now. But, but that's my thing is I love writing, listening to stories, reading about space and especially the commercial aspects. That's what really gets to be the commercial aspect. So that's what I really leave with is that, hey, we're there. It's happening. We have to look at how commercially things will keep going on, but people are making things happen around the world.
That's it for T-Minus Deep Space for December 2nd, 2023. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. You can email us at space@n2k.com or submit the survey in the show notes. Your feedback ensures that we deliver the information that keeps you a step ahead in the rapidly changing space industry. This episode was produced by Alice Carruth, mixing by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester, with original music and sound design by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jen Iben. Our VP is Brandon Karpf. And I'm Maria Varmazis. Thanks for listening.